It's the last day of Suicide Prevention Week, and in honor of that, I just want to take a second and share how suicide has affected my life personally. And I hope that suicide prevention doesn't end here. I hope that we don't let it end with the week and with the month of September, because it's lifelong that we should be fighting for suicide prevention and for resources and for, person-to-person support from the church, support from the government, support from organizations of any, value or whatever. Suicide prevention is so important. So, I just want to take a second and share my own story. On October 2nd, 2017, I woke up late, got ready super quick, and ran out the door. I was in cosmetology school at the time. And when I got there, I threw my stuff on the table because I was running late, ran to go sign in, and when I got back, my phone was sitting on the table because I had been late. And I noticed that it was ringing. My sister was calling me. I answer, and she was hysterically crying, saying, "He's gone. I can't find him. I don't know where he is. He's gone." So I got my stuff together, left school, and drove home screaming in my little O2 Tacoma in 9 a.m. traffic on the highway. And when I finally got home, I walked in the front door to my mom and sister just standing there, kind of clueless, not knowing what to do or where my dad was. And I just kind of joined in to the cluelessness. We decided we should probably call the police and let them know. So we did, and then we just sat and waited. And a few hours later, a detective and an officer showed up at our doorstep, and that's really when we knew in our hearts. But then they came in, asked to speak with my mother, and let her know that he had driven into water. And that's when we found out really that my dad had killed himself. And one of the witnesses that was at the scene reported that he had given her a thumbs down as he sat in his truck and floated in the water for a while before sinking and dying and suffocating, drowning. And that image haunts me. Suicide was never really out of the picture for my dad. He had attempted suicide multiple times in my life and his life, because he was in a constant battle with his own mind. He had bipolar disorder, so he would have depressive episodes and manic episodes, and they would last for weeks, months. So those super dark seasons, periods of time, were not unusual. In fact, they were so usual, I as a kid was super desensitized to how unusual it is for a normal person. I remember sitting with him at the end of his bed as he wept and wept, feeling worthless in this indescribable darkness that he just couldn't shake. And I also remember when he was manic and spent a bunch of money, and as a kid I thought he was just being really generous, wanting to buy me all these new things, and then realizing no, like that was him in a manic episode. But my dad thought that by ending his life, he was actually saving my life and my sister's life and my mom's life. He thought that he was so much of a burden and causing us so much pain that if he just took himself out of the picture, it would be better for the three of us. But the thing that he didn't understand was that though our lives felt heavy with his bipolar disorder as part of our life, though that felt heavy, we would have chosen him any day over him not being with us. We would have chosen to live with the weight of his bipolar any second of any day before we would have chosen his death. He wasn't a burden. He was my dad. His brain failed him, telling him he was unworthy of our love and of his own love. And that's the way it played out. And he chose to do that, to kill himself because he felt so stuck in this vicious cycle of bipolar disorder. And he thought that death was the only escape. And for me, his suicide left me changed. In a way, it almost made me empowered to now stand up for that and stand up for him and for the hope that he didn't necessarily get. For me, therapy has been crucial. I've dealt with PTSD from the image of him suffocating. I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I was suffocating, unable to breathe, like gasping for breath. I also, for weeks, if not months after his suicide, couldn't sleep. I have been going to therapy since I was 14, so it's been years of me going to therapy. But after that, even more of learning how to cope with the death of my dad, the loss of someone due to suicide, the PTSD, the sleeping. I was having health issues. I started vomiting all the time because of the trauma, and that's just how my body took it. So all that to say, like, the grief and I'll call them side effects won't ever end. With something like suicide, you don't move on from it. You just kind of learn how to live and let that be part of your story. And for me, I've learned that letting that be part of my story means talking a lot about it. And so there may be people who are like, we get it, your dad's dead, move on from it. But for me, that's not what it is. I said that I felt empowered by my dad's suicide, and I don't mean that in any negative or weird way. I just mean it has lit a flame in me to advocate and speak up for my dad and for the other people in this world who have felt so defeated by a mental illness that they've chosen to take their own life. And so my way from here is to continue talking about it, to continue speaking up for it, in hopes that people just feel less alone. So people feel loved and supported by those around them. I want this to be less taboo of a topic because so many people deal with this. And I hope that by my talking about my experience, I can light the flames under conversations to come. That conversations within the church and within organizations will start to happen so that they can see where they have been failing people with mental illnesses and suicidal thoughts. Because if we are honest with ourselves, and I include myself in the church, if we are honest with ourselves, we are not showing up for people who are experiencing those things. Far too often, it is dismissed with a, I'll be praying for you, or dismissed with a, here's this scripture. And it needs to be taken more seriously than that. For those people and for their families and for their circle of friends, like, it's too real of a thing to dismiss it. So I hope that by sharing my story of how suicide has affected my life, someone else feels the passion that I do to advocate and share their story so that it can become a movement of people fighting for each other, with each other, on the same team to prevent suicide and prevent like the dismissal of suicidal thoughts. So all of that to say, please join me. And if you've been affected by suicide in any way, I encourage you to share your story. Be vulnerable and move through the discomfort and share your story because someone may need to hear it.